Hello, welcome to the daily drawing. Today we're going to be drawing a great white shark. I do believe that's what this is. Alright, so to start off with, we're going to start with just like the belly area. You could go ahead and just draw this all in one big long shape, but sometimes it's a little hard and tricky to get the nuance of where it gets slightly pointier and slightly wider. So to start off with, I'm just going to start with kind of an oval shape like this to represent the area where the belly is, which is this area right here. Alright, so once I have my kind of belly area, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tack on the face and then tack on the tail. So if this is the end of the belly area, this is where we're going to curve down for kind of a pointy-ish tail. It's not like super pointy, but it does come to somewhat of a curve down here to make up the back end of the tail. So if this is the start of the belly right here at this point, and this is the end of the belly, the tail isn't super long, so be careful not to make it like really, really long, unless you just want a longer shark. So I'm just going to take the top of the spine, frown it down ever so slightly, or if you want your shark swimming in a different direction, feel free to change that, of course. And then I'm going to take the bottom of the belly and then kind of make it go relatively flat until it kind of almost connects with that part of the body. All right, and then make sure that you have somewhat of a kind of a round shape ending it by capping it off with somewhat of a parenthesis. So that will make the back of the tail area. And then on the front of it, I'm going to be doing something very similar, except if you'll notice the front of the face is a little bit wider than the back of the tail. Now, this is swimming towards us, so this is a little bit bigger than the back because of the perspective, but naturally their heads are wider than the tips of their tail areas. All right, so to do this part, if you'll notice the top of their heads are relatively flat. To get the top of the head, I'm going to take this spine, and then I'm just going to draw a somewhat flat line like this. This is going to give me the top of their forehead area. Now, I'm going to go ahead and draw the mouth just shut, so I'm just going to draw a curve going down. Here we can see the tip of the nose is somewhat rounded, and then it curves down and then connects to the bottom of the belly. Here's the belly area. There's a slight bump if you want to go for realism, but I'm just going to keep mine pretty smooth just to make it look nice. All right, so I'm just going to do a slight parenthesis, and then I'm going to go ahead and continue that parenthesis on down. And my goal is to connect to the bottom of the belly, not to the side of the belly, because otherwise we're going to have like a weird big bump, which there is a little bump, but not that big. So just doing a little smile until it connects back to the bottom of the belly. That way we get this kind of like a weird wonky teardrop shape, and then after you have gotten a shape and you're pretty satisfied with it, then you can erase that circle in the middle, or that ovally shape in the middle. So now we have our shark's body shape. Now, of course, at this point, if you want to tweak it by making it more rounded in some areas or making it bigger in some areas, you can. That's up to you. Kind of take your discretion and look at your picture and determine what you need to do for it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start with the face up here. Really pay attention to the size of the head compared to the body. The head only takes up a small portion. This is the edge of the head here. That's a small portion compared to the rest of the body. So don't make the head go like all the way into the center of the body. That'd be so weird. But okay, so I'm going to focus on this right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first actually draw the mouth before I draw the eye and stuff. If you'll notice, the mouth is just going to cause it to make a curve in the face a little bit further in. So I'm going to start at the tip of this nose, and then I'm just going to curve a smile into the head like this. Just a little bit. Don't go too far. Don't go too far. But curve it in however far you want to go in for the mouth. And then what you're going to do, now this one has a slight frown to it. If you want to make it frowning, you can. If you want to make it smile, if you want to make it flat, that's kind of up to you. Just because I like drawing animals that are happy, I'm just going to add a slight smile. But you can do whatever you want to it. All right. Then if you notice the bottom of the jaw just makes kind of a flat line going out, and then it stays round as it reaches the outside. Now, the reason we drew it all flat like this to begin with is because whenever you draw that flat line, if you look at this curves very naturally and lines up with that nose. So from here, I'm just going to draw a relatively flat line until it reaches that edge, and then I'm just going to add a parenthesis to cap it off with. Afterwards, you can erase the inside like this. Maybe smiling sharks make it look a little creepier than non-smiling sharks. I'm going to add a little bit of a curve down because that looks kind of scary. All right, so that feels a little bit more normal. I don't know, do sharks even smile? Anyway, okay, so what you can see here is there are some shark teeth here. So if you want to add that as a detail, you can just add some little triangle bumps to indicate the shark teeth. And I don't see very much shark teeth. There's a little bit of a bumpy texture up here, and we can also see the shadow of the inside of the mouth. To get that shadow look, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the mouth, and I'm just going to draw a slight curve to kind of connect it to the inside like this. The reason I'm doing that is because whenever I shade it in like this, it makes it look like we can kind of see into the mouth, and that makes it feel a little bit more 3D. So it kind of depends on how much detail that you want to add to that. All right, now for the eye placement, if I look at the tip of the bottom jaw and I go straight up, that should line up with the outside of my eye. So it's a really good idea to kind of use the things around you to measure. All right, so I'm gonna go straight up like this. You can draw a guideline if you need to. And then my eye is going to be right behind that guideline. Notice how tiny their eyes are, and they're also really close to the top of the head. There is a gap though, don't make it touch the actual top of the head. So just a little bitty circle to indicate that it's the eye location. You can fill it in all black, you can leave a little highlight. I like leaving little highlights. There are some wrinkles around the eye that if you want to, you can add some like parentheses and stuff around the eye, just to give it a little bit more texture and detail. But you know, if you're going for a cartoony aesthetic, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. All right, I don't know if that's their nose or if that's their nose. I don't really know shark anatomy, so I'm just gonna draw on the top. I'm assuming that's probably their nose. Maybe that's a battle scar or something. If you know shark anatomy, let me know. But this seems like that's probably more believable than nose. So I'm gonna add like a little bitty dot there for the nose. If I'm wrong, then I will find out later. All right, so I'm done with the face. That was pretty easy. All right, so if I look further back, do you see that these right here, these are the gills of the shark? Which, something I didn't know is that sharks have to constantly swim, otherwise they can't breathe. And I was like, that's kind of weird, I don't know. All right, so if I measure the size of the nose to the mouth, that's how far back the gills are. So I'm gonna measure on my paper the size of the tip of the nose to the mouth, go over, put a little marker dot, that's how far back I need to do my gills. That way you don't accidentally put your gills like too close to your mouth. All right, so if I look at the shape of the gills, they're relatively flat. They have slight curves at the corners, and you can draw the same exact number that you see in the picture, or you can draw fewer or more, right? I wouldn't go too much more though. All right, so to do this, I'm just starting off with a slight curve, then making it go relatively flat and then slight curve in. I don't want them to go all the way from the top of the body to the bottom. I want to keep them about center. I don't want them to be too big because otherwise they will be a little overwhelming and they wouldn't look quite like realistic-y looking gills. All right, you can also add some slight wonks if you're going for more realism, because there are some wonky gills in here. So I'm just gonna add 4. I think that there's like 5 or 6 in the picture, but I don't want to go too overboard because otherwise I feel like it'll make it look kind of weird. All right, and of course, if you want to add some wrinkles and stuff, you can add like little lines and some like smiles and frowns to add more wrinkles, but I'm not gonna go too far into it. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna go ahead and do this bottom fin before I do this top fin, because I'm gonna use the bottom fin to line up for my top fin. All right, so if I look at the size of that fin that we have right here, I'm gonna go ahead and use that same measurement I did before. So from the tip of the nose to the corner of the mouth, I'm gonna keep my finger still. That's about how wide my fin's gonna go from the corner of the fin to the tip of the fin. So if I take that same measurement I did before, and notice that it starts right there behind the very back the very back gill. So I'm gonna measure that, go over. So if I go down from the back gill, this is where I'm gonna start my fin, and then I'm gonna go down, that's where I want to stop my fin. So that way I know that my fin is going to be at least this big so that I don't accidentally draw it too small or too big. Now, granted, if you drew the head too big, that might not work and you might just have to eyeball it. That just depends on how well you measured it to start off with. All right, so to get started, I'm just going to draw from this point right here behind the last gill. I'm going to draw a parenthesis connecting that point down to below the body. Make sure you go to below the body. You don't have to go like super far below it, but make sure that you can tell that it's not like in the body. So just trying to do a parenthesis going down to that point where I knew that that's the same length as the length between the nose and the mouth. After I do that, I can see that there's a slight wiggly texture going back up into the body. Notice that it doesn't stop at the belly, it goes into the belly a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a slightly wiggly line going up, relatively straight but at a slight angle backwards. And then I can see that there's a fold or a wrinkle that's just kind of connecting it using a slight frown to the other side of the fin. Now, if you want to go for more of a cartoony aesthetic and you just want to leave it open, you can. That's kind of up to you. I'm going to leave mine like half and half, so I'm going to draw a slight indentation like this, but I want to leave a little part open just so that I can tell more easily that yes, is a fin. All right, so now that I have that fin drawn, I'm going to go ahead and draw. If you can see, there's another fin right here on the other side of the body. So if you look at it, it's going to be about halfway in between the first gill. So if I go from the first gill down, I want to make sure that I have a fin that's going to be in that area. Going across from it though, it's not quite as long as this fin. So if I go across from here, I know that I don't need to go past that line. I'd rather be a little bit above that line. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a parenthesis going down like this. And then I'm just going to draw another parenthesis kind of going up, but I want to make sure that it's slightly wider up here and it's pointier down here. So just kind of like you're drawing the letter V, but you're making it kind of like the wind is blowing it to curve it just a bit. All right, so that's my back fin. Now I'm almost done actually. Wow, sharks are not too hard to draw. Pretty cool. All right, so for my back fin, a lot of people draw the back fin like way up here, but their back fins are actually pretty far back on their body, which, because I used to draw them way too far up before I started studying more about sharks. All right, so if I go from the corner of this fin up, that should be about where I'm going to start my back fin. Once again, if your measurements were off, it may not be that way. You might have to kind of eyeball it, but the back fin is behind this fin. So make sure you don't accidentally put the back fin right there above the gills. They're about a fin size back. All right, so if I go up from the corner of this fin, I'm gonna go straight up like this. I usually always leave my lines as I'm measuring just to help me out so I don't forget. And then if I'm looking at the width of this fin, the width of the fin is fairly wide. It's not like super short. But if I'm going up from here and going across, it should be a little bit smaller than this fin, but not too much smaller. All right, so to draw the fin right here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start with a slight smile to get the fin going. And then I'm going to add a wonk. So I'm going to start turning that into a frown. And you can make this a little bit taller, shorter. On the shark, it's actually pretty small. I'm going to make mine a little bit bigger just to make it look a little bit more intimidating, but you can draw it whatever size that you want. So it starts off as a smile, then it changes to a frown. And then at the tip of it, we're going to do a slight frown for the very tip of the fin. And then if you'll notice, this isn't perfectly straight. It stays relatively straight at first, but it curves into a kind of a parenthesis down here. So in order to get that illusion, I'm just going to go down pretty straight, and then I'm going to start curving it in that parenthesis shape. So it's almost kind of like a the letter J of some sort. Does J's go that way? A backwards J. There we go. And you can leave this line for the back of the body so that it still looks like the belly is a little bit lower than the back of the fin. All right, I'm just going to erase my extra stuff. There we go. All right, so there are some little small fins down here that you can add. I don't know if that changes, like, if it's like the gender of the shark or whatever. I think someone told me once that, like, males have 3 or 2. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not going to speak much science because I don't know it. All right, so these are just, like, little bitty triangles. And I'm not too worried about the placement being, like, super exact. If you want to get them exact, they're below this other fin. But I usually just eyeball it for, like, really tiny details like that. So to do this, I'm just drawing a slight diagonal line, and I'm just bringing it back up like this. So I see that there's one, and then one more that's a little bit further back, like this. All right, and so that's just, once again, diagonal line, curving it back up with another diagonal line. All right, so final fin, woohoo! All right, this one right here is the back fin, and if you notice, it is the largest fin. Now, in this perspective, it seems like it's about the same size as this front fin, but this is gonna be the biggest fin on the shark. If you look at it, it's gonna be a slight diagonal line going up this way, and then a slight diagonal line going down, and then this is kind of like a curvy greater than or less than sign. So to do this, I'm going to start not on the very tip of it. I'm going to go up a little bit and start it slightly above where the tail fin ended. The reason being is that that's where the muscle is grabbing onto that fin, allowing it to get a little bit more power. All right, so to do this, I'm just going to do a slight frown going up, and then I'm going to do a slight frown, or a slight smile, I guess, going back like this. And then just kind of eyeball and figure out what kind of angle you would like. And then to cap it off, I'm just going to do a parenthesis shape. I do want it to go a little bit closer to the center right here. As soon as I hit that center, that's where I'm going to change the angle to go out in the opposite direction like this. So it's almost kind of like a crescent moon of sorts, which is pretty cool. Moon sharks. I think I could roll with that. All right. So once you have finished that, then you've pretty much finished drawing the shark. Sometimes great white sharks have a really distinctive pattern that you can see. Here we can see that there's like a wiggly line that goes all the way from the back to the front that is making up their patterns. So if you want to add that extra detail, I'm just going to add a wiggly line. That's not perfect. The more random you make it, the more realistic it's actually going to feel. And then I'm going to start behind my fin right here. Do another wiggly line. Not worried about making it exactly like the picture. Like this. Okay? And And then there are some more smaller details that we didn't add in, but I'm just going to leave it like that because I really like keeping it somewhat simple. Because if you make it look too detailed, it's going to start looking a little scary. But I mean, hey, if you want to make your shark look more intimidating, add a couple of those extra wrinkles, or add a couple like more like maybe like an indentation in the back of the fin. Especially with sharks, they're kind of territorial at some points, so they might have like a little bit more back fins. Although I think I've heard that sharks are actually a lot more peaceful than a lot of people make them out to be. What was it, like more people get killed by vending machines than sharks every year, which I think is kind of it's not funny. It's not funny. It's a little ironic though. I don't know. All right, so I'm going to add a little bit of shading here, especially on this the back fins, just to make them feel like they're further in the back and not quite even with the front. And then a little bit more in the center of the body, just to kind of make it feel as though there's a little bit of light reflection happening on the animal, which looks pretty cool. All right, so that's it for a shark. Relatively easy. They're not super hard to draw once you learn how to do them. You can draw them in lots of sorts of cool poses and stuff, and you can make the mouth open even wider if you want. But yeah, so there's the shark. I hope you had fun. Have a good day. Bye.